I've been there splurging on a budget bookshelf speaker that sounded great on the box, only to discover a thin, mushy low end and a treble that screams like a cheap radio when you finally plug it into your home theater. Those cheap alternatives leave you staring at the price tag, wondering if you got ripped off, and that hesitation can turn a simple upgrade into a regret. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm going to walk through why the HiVi Swans H6 feels like a smarter buy or why it might still miss the mark for you. First off, the H6 sits in the sweet spot of the bookshelf monitor market. It's not a massive floor-standing tower, but it's also not a tiny desktop driver you'd hide behind a monitor. The 6.5-inch woofer and a 50mm mid-range driver give it a three-way design that promises tighter bass and clearer mids than a typical two-way budget set. In practice, that means when you fire up a movie soundtrack with a lot of orchestral low-end, think Inception or Interstellar, the bass hits you with a defined thump that you can feel without it turning into a rumble wash. I tested this by connecting the speakers to a 4K TV for a weekend binge, and the explosion of the opening credits felt surprisingly immersive for a bookshelf pair. What really sets the H6 apart is the connectivity suite. You get Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Optical, Coaxial, line-in, and a balanced input all on the back panel. For a lot of people, the decision between a wired or wireless setup becomes a headache, but with these speakers you can start with a quick Bluetooth stream from your phone, then switch to a lossless optical feed from a Blu-ray player without swapping cables. I used the Bluetooth mode to play a high-resolution FLAC library from my phone while cooking, and the signal stayed stable even from across the kitchen. Later, I switched to the optical input for a game night on a PlayStation, and the latency was negligible, no noticeable lag between controller input and sound. Now, let's talk about the room setup. The H6 is designed to sit on a standard bookshelf or on speaker stands about 30 centimeters off the floor. Because of the 6.5-inch woofer, you'll want a bit of space behind the speaker for the bass to breathe. Cramped corners can cause the low end to balloon and sound boomy. In a medium-sized living room, around 20 sqm, I placed them a foot apart on stands and angled them slightly inward. The sweet spot was roughly 2 feet away from the center, and that's where the stereo image held together nicely. Vocals stayed centered while instruments panned cleanly. If you plan to use them in a tighter space, consider adding a small front-facing bass trap or moving the speakers a few inches away from the wall to avoid that muddy effect you sometimes hear with other bookshelf monitors. Who should buy these? If you're an audiophile who enjoys high-resolution audio files, a home theater enthusiast who wants a compact solution that can handle both movies and music, or a content creator who needs reliable monitoring without a massive investment, the H6 checks a lot of boxes. The built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth make it friendly for streaming services, while the balanced input caters to those who still run a DAC or a small audio interface. It's also a decent choice for gamers who want that extra punch and explosions without having to shell out for a dedicated soundbar or a full 5.1 system. Who should skip? If you're looking for bone-shaking sub-bass that can replace a dedicated subwoofer, the H6 will fall short. The 6.5-inch driver does a respectable job, but it won't move a large room the way a 10-inch or larger woofer would. Similarly, if you're a purist who insists on a single amplifier, active monitor design, or a brand with an established reputation in professional studios, you might feel more comfortable with something like the Yamaha HS series or KRK Rocketline. Finally, if you're on a tight budget under $200, the H6 sits higher than many entry-level options, so the price might feel steep relative to what you can get for a couple of dollars less. Strengths in real-world use: the connectivity is truly all-in-one. I never had to reach for an extra Bluetooth receiver or an optical adapter, everything was already there. The high-resolution audio claim holds up when you compare a 24-bit FLAC track on a USB DAC versus the same track streamed over Bluetooth 5.0. The difference is subtle but noticeable in the detail of acoustic guitars and the ambience of a live recording. The aesthetic design is also worth a mention. Those matte black cabinets with a brushed metal grille blend nicely into a modern living room without looking like a piece of equipment you're trying to hide. Weaknesses you'll notice after a few weeks: the bass, while tighter than cheap competitors, can feel a bit recessed when you push the volume past 75% in a larger space. The speakers also run warm after extended sessions. The rear vent helps, but if you're planning marathon gaming nights,